Mali and Burkina Faso have issued bans on US citizens entering their countries with immediate effect.
Now, Mali and Burkina Faso have announced travel restrictions on American nationals after the United States included both the African nations on a no-entry list.
Sahel nations have waged a visa war against the US, Mali and Burkina Faso. The two Sahel states have banned Americans from entering their countries. Niger, too, has introduced a permanent ban on US nationals.
Both countries announced their decisions on December the 30th through statements issued by their respective foreign ministries.
You've probably seen the headlines. Another diplomatic spat, another travel advisory. But what if I told you this wasn't just a random flare-up? What if the decision by two African nations, Mali and Burkina Faso, to bar all US citizens wasn't a simple disagreement, but a calculated move in a much larger global power struggle? What if this is the clearest sign yet that a new Cold War is kicking off across Africa, pitting the United States against its old rival, Russia? Because this isn't just a story about visa paperwork. It's about military coups, the expulsion of Western armies, the arrival of Russian mercenaries, and a fight for the future of a continent. This is what's really going on in the heart of West Africa. It all happened incredibly fast. On December 16, 2025, the Trump administration announced a major expansion of its travel restriction policies. Citing national security concerns, the White House added a handful of countries to a list of nations facing a full ban on entry into the United States.
President Donald Trump has expanded US travel restrictions to 5 more countries. Effective January 1, 2026, the administration will add several countries to the list of nations facing full or partial limits on visa issuance and entry into the United States. Full restrictions will be imposed on nationals of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, and Syria.
Effective January 1st, 2026. Among them were the West African nations of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. The reaction was swift and furious. These countries, all led by new military governments, didn't see the ban as a technical security measure. They saw it as a disrespectful and punitive act. The Malian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it regretted that a major decision was made without any consultation, calling the security justification a total contradiction of what was actually happening on the ground. Then came the retaliation. Within 2 weeks, between December 29th and 31st, 2025, first Mali and then Burkina Faso announced they were imposing their own immediate and reciprocal visa bans on all United States citizens. Citing the principle of reciprocity, the governments made their message unmistakable. If our people aren't welcome in your country, your people aren't welcome in ours. A diplomatic tit-for-tat had just escalated into a full-blown visa war. But to understand why these countries were so willing to provoke a superpower, you have to look past the headlines and into years of simmering resentment and a dramatic pivot in global alliances. To really get the anger behind these bans, we need to rewind. For years, this huge region of West Africa, known as the Sahel, has been the center of a brutal war against jihadist insurgencies. And for a decade, the main foreign power leading that fight was the region's former colonial ruler, France. France's big mission, Operation Barkhane, involved thousands of troops working with local armies. The US provided crucial support with intelligence and logistics. For a while, it looked like a united Western front against a common enemy. But the front failed. The violence didn't stop, it got worse. Terrorist groups tied to Al-Qaeda and ISIS spread, killing thousands, displacing millions, and destabilizing entire countries. People who were promised security saw only growing chaos. They started seeing the Western forces not as protectors, but as an ineffective and arrogant occupying power. All that public anger created the perfect opening for radical change, and that change came through military coups. First in Mali in 2020 and 2021, then Burkina Faso in 2022, and finally Niger in 2023. In each case, military leaders seized power by riding a massive wave of popular frustration. Their promise was simple: we'll restore our nation's sovereignty and we'll bring the security the West failed to deliver. Their first moves were to tear down the old system. They accused the regional bloc, ECOWAS, of being a puppet for the West and pulled out in early 2025. Then they formed their own alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, a new military and political pact made to resist foreign pressure. The final act of this breakup was kicking out their old partners. One by one, the juntas demanded the withdrawal of French ambassadors and, most importantly, French troops. U.S. military cooperation was also cut off. The message couldn't have been clearer. The era of Western dominance in the Sahel was over. Having kicked out one set of foreign powers, they were ready to invite in a new one. As Western boots were leaving the Sahel, Russian boots were arriving. Long before the visa bans, the military juntas of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger were building a powerful new alliance with Moscow. They saw Russia as a partner who could deliver what the West wouldn't: security, with no strings attached and no lectures about democracy. This wasn't just a casual friendship. It was a formal, strategic partnership. On August 14, 2025, the defense ministers from all three Sahel nations flew to Moscow for a summit with their Russian counterparts. There, they signed a landmark defense agreement, formalizing Russia's role as the region's new security guarantor. It promised deep cooperation in military training, arms supplies, and intelligence sharing.
And Russia has promised to train troops and supply weapons to Sahel countries in Africa, as Moscow seeks to expand its clout in these West African countries led by military juntas.
For the Sahel states, this was a declaration of independence from the West. For Russia, it was a geopolitical jackpot. As Western influence collapsed, Russia stepped right in, using its state-backed military contractors, the Africa Corps, which replaced the Wagner Group, to fill the security vacuum. But this partnership isn't about ideology. It's purely transactional. Russia provides the military hardware, the advisors, and the political cover at places like the UN. In return, the Sahel nations give Russia something incredibly valuable: strategic access to a critical part of Africa and its vast natural resources. The region is rich in gold and, crucially, uranium, minerals vital to the global economy. This security for resources deal allows Russia to gain strategic assets and economic footholds, all while undermining American and European influence. This is the new reality. The U.S. travel ban in December 2025 wasn't the cause of the crisis, but it was the final trigger. The AES juntas saw it as one last hostile act from a power they had already rejected, confirming their pivot to Moscow was the right move. Their swift, coordinated retaliation was a signal to the world that they were no longer acting alone, but as a unified bloc with the backing of a rival superpower. This fast-moving situation in the Sahel is one of the most important geopolitical stories playing out right now, but it gets surprisingly little attention. To keep up with these shifting alliances and what they mean for the world, make sure you subscribe. And let me know in the comments. Do you think this is a real move towards independence? Or are these countries just swapping one form of dependency for another? So what does this all mean? The visa bans from Mali and Burkina Faso are much more than a diplomatic spat. They're a sign of a massive geopolitical shift. For the people and businesses caught in the middle, the impact is immediate. Tourism was already low because of security risks, but the bans are a major headache for U.S. companies in mining and energy, and for aid groups now forced to rely on non-American staff. One resident in Mali's capital, Bamako, pointed out the ban would hurt U.S. companies in the country far more than anyone else.
Our leaders have applied the principle of reciprocity. I think the impact will be two-way. I believe the United States will be affected more than we will, because at our level the decision will only affect individuals. They, however, will pay the price because they have several companies here in the Sahel that exploit our natural resources.
But the bigger story is about a new global contest for influence. The United States and its allies, after a decade of a failed war on terror, have been unceremoniously kicked out of a vital region. In their place, Russia has successfully installed itself as the security partner for a new alliance of military governments, gaining access to resources and projecting its power. The juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger say this is the dawn of a new, sovereign era, finally free from colonial influence. The U.S. sees it as a democratic collapse that has created a new haven for Russian meddling and instability. The tough question that remains is this: is this the start of true African independence, or have the nations of the Sahel simply traded one foreign master for another? The future of millions and the balance of power in a new Cold War might just depend on the answer.